The bruises on elderly Etta Mae's face told a story of brutality, but the silence on the other end of her phone line promised a story of war. They thought she was just another helpless statistic, a fragile woman they could break and bury under a pile of falsified police reports. They didn't know that the trembling hand dialing the phone wasn't calling a lawyer or a pleading relative. She was waking up a ghost. When the sheriff of Oak Haven County laughed at her tears, he didn't realize he had just started a countdown. The karma that was coming didn't wear a badge. It wore a Special Forces patch, and it wasn't interested in an apology. The heat in Oak Haven, Georgia, had a weight to it, a sticky, suffocating pressure that pressed down on the roof of Etta Mae Ellison's aging sedan. The air conditioner had given up years ago, but Etta didn't mind. She rolled the window down, letting the humid breeze ruffle the lace collar of her Sunday best, a periwinkle floral dress she saved for church and the grocery store. Etta was a woman of routine. Her life was a series of gentle circles: home, the First Baptist Church on Elm, the local market, and back home. She drove well under the speed limit, her gloved hands gripping the wheel at 10 and 2, humming a hymn that had been stuck in her head since choir practice. She checked her rearview mirror. The road behind her was empty, save for a shimmering heat haze rising from the asphalt. She felt a small flutter of contentment. Her son, Marcus, had sent money for the roof repair, and the contractor was finally coming soon. Life was quiet. Life was good. Then the siren cut through her hymn like a serrated knife. Blue and red lights exploded in her rearview mirror. Etta's heart gave a painful thud against her ribs. She checked her speedometer. She was well under the limit. She checked her seatbelt, fastened tight. Confused, she eased the sedan onto the gravel shoulder, the tires crunching softly as the car came to a halt. She put the car in park and waited, her hands visible on the steering wheel, just as Marcus had taught her a lifetime ago. "Mama, if you ever get stopped, hands on the wheel. Don't move. Don't breathe wrong. Just wait." In the side mirror, she saw the officer approach. He was a large man, his uniform straining at the gut. Sunglasses hid his eyes. He didn't walk. He stalked. This was Sergeant Shane Whitaker. Every resident in the darker parts of Oak Haven knew Whitaker. He was a man who wore his badge not as a shield, but as a crown. Behind him, a younger officer, Officer Caleb Torres, looked nervous, his hand hovering near his holster. Whitaker tapped the glass with his baton, hard. Etta rolled the window down further. "Good afternoon, officer. Was I speeding?" "License and registration," Whitaker barked, ignoring her greeting. He leaned in, the smell of stale tobacco and aggression rolling off him. "You know you got a tail light out, Mama." Etta blinked. "Oh, I didn't know, sir. I just checked them recently." "Well, it's out now," Whitaker sneered. "Step out of the car." "Sir?" Etta's voice trembled. "I have arthritis in my knees. It's hard for me to get out. My registration is right here in the—" "I said step out of the vehicle," Whitaker shouted, his hand dropping to the door handle. He ripped the door open. "Stop resisting." "I'm not resisting," Etta cried out, panic rising in her throat. She fumbled with the seatbelt buckle, her old fingers stiff and uncooperative. Whitaker didn't wait. He reached in, grabbing her by the arm where the bone had thinned with age. He yanked. Etta screamed as she was dragged from the sanctuary of her sedan. Her feet tangled in the hem of her periwinkle dress, and she hit the gravel hard. The sharp stones bit into her cheek. Pain exploded in her shoulder. "Officer Torres, cover! Assaulting an officer!" Whitaker roared, pressing his knee into the small of Etta's back. "Sergeant, she didn't touch you," Torres stammered, freezing in place. "I said cover." Whitaker looked back, his face purple with a sudden, irrational rage that often consumed him when he felt his authority was even silently questioned. She reached for a weapon. Etta lay in the dirt, the taste of dust and blood in her mouth. "Please," she whispered. Tears cut tracks through the grime on her face. "My son. Please, just call my son." Whitaker laughed, a dry, hacking sound. He leaned down, his lips close to her ear. "Your son ain't here to save you, old woman. You're in my town now." He grabbed her by the hair, lifting her face only to slam it back down against the hood of the patrol car as he hauled her up. The impact split her lip. Blood dripped onto the pristine lace collar. He threw her into the back of the cruiser like a sack of garbage. As the door slammed shut, separating her from the world, Etta didn't cry out again. She sat slumped in the hard plastic seat, her shoulder throbbing with a sickening pulse. She closed her eyes and prayed. Not for salvation. She prayed for Whitaker, because she knew who she was going to call. And she knew that once that call was made, God's mercy was the only thing that could help Sergeant Whitaker. The holding cell and the Oak Haven County Sheriff's Department smelled of bleach and despair. Etta sat on the metal bench, her Sunday dress torn at the shoulder, her face swelling into a grotesque mask of purple and blue. They had fingerprinted her, mocked her trembling hands, and tossed her in with a warning to shut up and sit tight until the judge saw her soon. She had a day to rot. Officer Torres, the rookie, had walked by several times. He couldn't look her in the eye. Finally, on another pass, he stopped. Whitaker was out on patrol, probably looking for someone else to torment. "Ma'am?" Torres whispered. Etta looked up, one eye swollen shut. "Yes, child? I can't let you out. He'd kill me, but..." He looked around, checking the cameras, then slipped a cell phone through the bars. "You get one call. Make it quick. Delete the log." Etta took the phone with shaking hands. She didn't call a lawyer. She didn't call the Reverend. She dialed a number she had memorized many years ago. A number that connected to a satellite phone halfway across the world. It rang once, twice. "Talk to me." The voice was deep, devoid of emotion, and surrounded by the static hiss of a secure line. "Baby," Etta whispered, her voice cracking. There was a pause on the other end. The static seemed to freeze. "Mama." The tone shifted instantly from operator to son, but the intensity dialed up, not down. "Why are you calling this line? Is everything okay? I'm in jail, Marcus." "Jail?" The word was flat, dangerous. "Who put you in jail?" "A man named Whitaker. Sergeant Whitaker. He hurt me, baby. He pulled me out of the car. My face, my shoulder." Etta started to sob, the shock finally giving way to the pain. "He said you weren't here to save me." Thousands of miles away in a dusty outpost, Major Marcus Ellison of the 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment, Delta, stood up. He was fully geared, dust covering his tactical vest, a suppressed carbine resting against his hip. Around him, 3 other men, his team, stopped what they were doing. They knew that tone. They had seen Marcus interrogate insurgents with less intensity than he had right now. "Mama," Marcus said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "Listen to me. Are you safe right now? I'm in a cell. The boy gave me a phone. They charged me with assaulting an officer. Okay, don't say another word to them. Don't sign anything. I'm coming. But you're deployed, baby. You can't just leave." "I'm coming," Marcus repeated. "Give the phone back. Stay alive." The line went dead. Marcus lowered the satellite phone. He looked at his team. There was Dutch, a giant of a man, Cicero, the communications specialist, and Viper, their sniper. "Pack it up," Marcus said. "We have a mission brief in a short time." "Mission's canceled," Marcus said, unstrapping his helmet. "Family emergency." "What kind?" Viper asked. Marcus turned to them. His eyes, usually cold and calculating, were burning with a fire that could consume cities. "A dirty cop beat my mother. He told her nobody was coming to save her." Cicero let out a low whistle. "Oak Haven, Georgia?" "Oak Haven," Marcus confirmed. "That's a small town," Dutch noted, though he was already reaching for his bag. "Small towns have big shadows," Viper said. Marcus walked to the tent flap, looking out at the desert that reminded him of nothing and everything. He pulled a favor card he had been saving for years, a direct line to a general at JSOC who owed him his life. "I need a bird," Marcus said into the radio handset. "And I need an extraction now." Back in the cell, Etta handed the phone back to Officer Torres. "Did you call a lawyer?" Torres asked nervously. "No," Etta said, wiping the blood from her lip. She sat up a little straighter. The pain was still there, but the fear was gone. She looked at the young officer with pity. "I called the reckoning." The town of Oak Haven woke up the next morning under a blanket of heavy gray fog. It was the kind of weather that dampened sound and made the world feel small and isolated. Inside the sheriff's station, Sheriff Harlan Pierce was drinking his third cup of coffee, staring at the paperwork Sergeant Whitaker had slapped on his desk. "You charged her with assaulting an officer and resisting arrest?" Pierce asked, raising a bushy gray eyebrow. He knew Whitaker. He knew the man was a blunt instrument, useful for keeping the undesirables in line, but prone to making messes. "She was belligerent, Sheriff," Whitaker lied, leaning back in the chair, picking his teeth with a plastic stirrer. "Reached for my belt. Had to put her down. Standard procedure," Pierce sighed. "She's elderly, Whitaker. She teaches Sunday school. The optics on this are going to be hell if the local paper picks it up." "They won't," Whitaker smirked. "I already told the editor that Etta was swerving. Possible DUI. Narcotics suspected. We're holding her car for a search. I think we're going to find something in there." Pierce looked at his sergeant. He knew exactly what that meant. Whitaker was going to make sure they found something. "Fine. Just keep it quiet. Get her to the judge. Get her a public defender who wants to make a deal, and get a plea deal. I want her probation tied to the property lien." "Yes, sir." Whitaker stood up, hitching his belt. "I'm going to go check on the prisoner. Make sure she's ready to cooperate." Whitaker walked out to the front desk, chuckling to himself. He loved mornings. He felt like a king in his little kingdom. He walked past the front dispatcher, a woman named Sarah, who was staring at the front glass doors with a look of utter confusion. "What's wrong with you, Sarah?" Whitaker asked. "Sergeant, look," she whispered, pointing outside. Whitaker looked through the glass. A convoy of 3 blacked-out SUVs. Saint-Sauveurs had pulled up to the curb, right in the no-parking fire lane. They weren't police vehicles. They were matte black, heavy, and expensive. There were no markings, no plates that Whitaker could recognize, just federal government tags. The doors opened in unison. 4 men stepped out. They didn't look like feds. Feds wore cheap suits and looked tired. These men wore tactical cargo pants, tight t-shirts that struggled to contain functional muscle, and baseball caps pulled low. They moved with a fluid, predatory grace that made the hair on the back of Whitaker's neck stand up. Leading them was a man with dark skin and eyes that looked like they had seen the end of the world. He walked straight toward the glass doors. "Who the hell is that?" Whitaker muttered, his hand instinctively drifting to his sidearm. The door swung open. The air in the station seemed to drop several degrees. The man walked up to the high counter. He didn't look at Sarah. He looked through the open door of the back office, locking eyes with Whitaker. "Can I help you?" Sarah squeaked. "My name is Marcus Ellison," the man said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried to every corner of the room. It was the voice of a man who was used to being obeyed instantly. "You have my mother." Whitaker stepped forward, puffing his chest out. Now hold on a minute, son. You can't just barge in here. Visiting hours ain't until— I'm not a visitor, Marcus said, turning his gaze to Whitaker. The look stopped Whitaker mid-sentence. It wasn't anger. It was assessment. Marcus was looking at Whitaker's throat, then his hands, then his hip. It took less than a second. "You're Sergeant Whitaker," Marcus stated. "Yeah, and you're trespassing," Whitaker snapped, trying to regain control. "Get out before I throw you in a cell next to your mama." Behind Marcus, the giant man known as Dutch stepped forward, crossing his massive arms. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I'd love to see you try, pork chop." Sheriff Pierce burst out of his office, sensing the volatility. "What is going on here?" Marcus shifted his focus to the sheriff. He reached into his back pocket. Officer Torres, standing by the filing cabinets, flinched, expecting a gun. Instead, Marcus pulled out a leather wallet and flipped it open. He didn't show a badge. He showed a AC card with a specific color stripe and a folded piece of paper stamped with the Department of Defense seal. "Major Marcus Ellison, U.S. Army," Marcus said. "I am here to take custody of Etta Mae Ellison on the grounds of medical emergency and legal misrepresentation." "This is a local police matter, Major," Pierce said, trying to sound authoritative, but failing. "Military has no jurisdiction here. I have a lawyer from the JAG courts and a civil rights attorney from Atlanta parking their cars right now," Marcus said calmly. "But that's for the paperwork. Right now, I'm here for my mother. And if I find out she hasn't received medical attention for the injuries this man inflicted," Marcus pointed a finger at Whitaker without looking at him, "then this ceases to be a legal conversation and becomes a survival situation." "Are you threatening a police officer?" Whitaker stepped into Marcus's personal space, putting his face inches from Marcus's. "You think because you're some soldier boy you scare me? I run this town." Marcus didn't blink. He moved so fast, Officer Torres missed it. One moment Whitaker was in his face. The next Whitaker was spun around, his arm twisted behind his back at a sickening angle. His face slammed onto the front counter. "Don't," Marcus whispered into Whitaker's ear. "Do not let your ego write a check your body can't cash. I hunt men who kill for a living. You harass old women. We are not the same." Dutch and Viper stepped between the other officers and Marcus, their hands empty but ready. "Nobody draws a weapon," Dutch warned, his voice a low rumble. "Unless you want to explain to the Pentagon why you shot active duty special forces." Sheriff Pierce turned pale. "Let him go, Major. Let him go." Marcus released Whitaker, shoving him away with a disgust that stung more than the physical pain. Whitaker stumbled back, rubbing his shoulder, his face beet red with humiliation. "Where is she?" Marcus asked. "Cell 2, Torres said quickly, stepping forward. "I'll take you." Marcus followed the young officer, his team trailing behind to secure the perimeter of the hallway. When Torres unlocked the heavy steel door, Marcus felt his heart stop. Etta was lying on the cot, shivering. Her face was a roadmap of violence. Her eye was swollen shut. Her lips split and infected, and her arm was cradled against her chest. "Mama!" Marcus's voice broke. Etta opened her good eye. She smiled through the pain. "I knew you'd come." Marcus knelt beside her, the warrior facade cracking just enough to show the sun underneath. He touched her face gently. "I'm here, Mama. We're leaving." "They said I can't leave," Etta whispered. Marcus stood up, lifting her effortlessly into his arms. He walked out of the cell, carrying her like she was made of porcelain. He walked back into the main lobby, where the sheriff and Whitaker were waiting with their hands on their holsters. "You can't take her," Pierce said, though he looked unsure. "She's under arrest. She's going to the hospital," Marcus said, walking past them. "If you want to stop me, shoot me in the back." He walked out the door. Nobody moved. As Dutch followed him out, he stopped and looked at Whitaker. You better pray she recovers fast, Sergeant. Because if she doesn't, the Major is going to come back, and he won't bring us next time. He'll come alone." The Oak Haven General Hospital was a small facility, but the doctors moved fast when 4 Delta Force operators stood in the waiting room. While Etta was being treated for a fractured clavicle and severe contusions, Marcus turned the hospital waiting area into a tactical command post. Cicero, the team's specialist, sat with a laptop open on his knees. He wasn't playing games. He was using a chaotic array of software to brute force his way into the Oak Haven County server. "Talk to me, Cicero," Marcus said, pacing. He had changed out of his tactical shirt into a fresh hoodie, but he still looked ready for war. "I'm in their dispatch logs," Cicero said, typing furiously. "And I'm pulling the dashcam footage from Whitaker's cruiser. It's encrypted, but give me a short time." "Why did he stop her, Marcus?" Bennett asked. Bennett was the attorney Marcus had called, a sharp-dressed man in a 3-piece suit who looked like he billed by the second. "The police report says swerving and a broken tail light." "My mother doesn't swerve," Marcus said. "And I replaced those bulbs myself when I was home on leave recently. LEDs. They don't burn out." "Got it," Cicero announced. "Video is up." They gathered around the screen. The footage was grainy, showing the rear of Etta's sedan. The timestamp showed Sunday afternoon. On screen, Etta's car was driving perfectly straight. Both taillights were functioning. "No probable cause," Bennett muttered. "This is false arrest, plain and simple. We can sue the department for millions." "Keep watching," Cicero said. "Turn up the audio." On the laptop, the interior audio of the cruiser played. Whitaker and Officer Torres were talking before the lights went on. "That's the one, right there," Whitaker's voice rasped on the recording. "The blue sedan." "You sure, Sarge?" Torres's nervous voice replied. "That's Mrs. Ellison. She's nice. She brings cookies to the fire station." "I don't give a damn about her cookies," Whitaker snapped. The mayor and the sheriff made it clear the developer needs that corner lot by the end of the month. She won't sell. She keeps talking about family legacy. Marcus froze. The air in the waiting room seemed to vanish. "So what are we doing?" Torres asked. "We're going to find some drugs," Whitaker laughed. "Civil asset forfeiture, kid. If we charge her with a felony transporting narcotics, we can seize the car and the house as proceeds of criminal activity. Once the state seizes it, the county auctions it. The developer buys it cheap. Easy money." "But she's elderly," Torres protested weakly. "She's a nuisance," Whitaker said. "Light her up." The siren blared on the recording. Marcus stared at the screen. His hands were clenched so tight his knuckles were white. This wasn't just police brutality. This wasn't just a bad cop having a bad day. This was a conspiracy. "They targeted her," Marcus said, his voice terrifyingly quiet. "They didn't just beat her. They planned to frame her to steal her land. Civil asset forfeiture abuse," Bennett said, looking disgusted. "It's a loophole. In Georgia, if they suspect the property is used for crime, they can take it before a conviction. It forces the owner to prove a negative to get it back. It bankrupts people." "The developer," Marcus said. "Who is it?" Cicero tapped a few keys. "Sheriff Pierce's brother-in-law owns a shell company called Oak Ridge Development. They're planning a high-end strip mall. The blueprints show it right over your mother's house and the 3 houses next to it." "The 3 houses next to it." Marcus's eyes widened. "Mrs. Higgins lives there. Mr. Henderson. They're all elderly. They're all black." "I'm checking arrest records," Cicero said, his fingers flying. "Holy Marcus! Mrs. Higgins was arrested recently for resisting arrest. Her house is currently listed for county auction. Mr. Henderson was hospitalized after a fall during a welfare check by Whitaker last week. He's in a nursing home now and the county has power of attorney." The full weight of the situation crashed down. This was a systematic purge, a predator ring wearing badges hunting the weak to feed the greedy. "They aren't cops," Marcus said, turning away from the screen. "They're a gang." Bennett closed his briefcase. "I can fight this in court, Marcus. With this video, I can burn them down. But it will take time. The federal investigation, the grand jury." "Start the paperwork, Bennett," Marcus said, walking toward the exit. "But I'm not waiting." "Marcus," Bennett warned, "you are an active duty officer. You cannot go to war on American soil. You will go to Leavenworth." Marcus stopped at the door. He looked back at his mother's room where a nurse was adjusting her IV. Then he looked at his team, Dutch, Viper, and Cicero. They were already standing, waiting for the order. They knew the look in his eyes. It was the same look he had before the raid in the Syrian valley. "I'm not going to war," Marcus said coldly. "I'm going to conduct a psychological operation. They wanted to use fear to take this town. Fine. I'm going to show them what fear actually looks like." He turned to Dutch. "Get the gear from the truck. Not the lethal stuff. Get the toys. We're going to pay a visit to the sheriff's house tonight." "What about Whitaker?" Viper asked. "Whitaker is mine," Marcus said. "Cicero, find out where Whitaker drinks on Monday nights." "The Rusty Nail," Cicero replied instantly. "He's there right now." Marcus checked his watch. "Perfect. Let's go have a drink." The twist wasn't just the corruption. It was the realization that Marcus wasn't just facing a bully. He was facing a machine. And to break a machine, you don't just hit it. You dismantle it piece by piece, starting with the smallest cog. As they walked out into the humid Georgia night, the insects were screaming in the trees. But for the first time in Oak Haven history, the predators weren't the ones wearing badges. The predators were the four men getting into the black SUVs, and they were hungry. The humid Georgia night was thick with the sound of crickets. But around Sheriff Pierce's sprawling ranch-style home, the air felt unnaturally still. Pierce sat in his leather recliner, nursing a glass of bourbon. The television was blaring the late news, but he wasn't watching. He was thinking about the four men in the black SUVs. He was thinking about the look in Marcus Ellison's eyes. He took a sip, the ice clinking against the glass. "They're just soldiers," he muttered to the empty room. "They can't touch me here. I'm the law." Suddenly, the television screen flickered. The news anchor froze, her face distorting into static. Then, the screen went black. Pierce frowned and mashed the remote buttons. "Damn cable." The screen flared to life again. But it wasn't the news. It was a live feed of his own living room. Pierce froze. He saw himself on the screen, sitting in his chair, holding his drink. He spun around looking for the camera. There was nothing. "Who's there?" he shouted, his hand reaching for the service pistol on the side table. "Sit down, Jim." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. His surround sound system. It was Marcus's voice, calm and terrifyingly clear. Pierce grabbed his gun and stood up, aiming at the shadows. "I'm calling the state troopers. You're dead, Ellison." "The troopers are a long way away," the voice replied. "We only need a short time." Suddenly, the lights in the house cut out. Pierce was plunged into darkness. He backed against the wall, his heart hammering against his ribs. He fumbled for his phone, but there was no signal. "Jammer," he whispered, realizing the level of tech he was up against. A red laser dot appeared on his chest, then another on his forehead, then a third on his gun hand. Pierce dropped the gun. It clattered loudly on the hardwood floor. "What do you want?" he whimpered. The light snapped back on, blindingly bright. Sitting on his sofa, casually flipping through a magazine, was Dutch. The giant man was wearing a balaclava, but Pierce recognized the sheer size of him. He hadn't heard a door open. He hadn't heard a footstep. "We want the truth, Jim," Dutch said, not looking up from the magazine. "About the land. About the elderly people you've been locking up. About the kickbacks from Oak Ridge Development." I don't know what you're talking about, Pierce stammered. Dutch looked up. Wrong answer. On the TV screen, a document appeared. It was a bank statement from an offshore account. It listed a deposit of a substantial amount, dated shortly after Mrs. Higgins was arrested. We have your emails, Jim, Dutch said softly. We have your texts. We have the blueprints. Cicero is very good at what he does. We know you're planning to bulldoze Etta's house soon. Pierce sank to his knees. It wasn't me. It was the mayor and Whitaker. Whitaker pushes them. I just signed the papers. You're the sheriff, Dutch said, standing up. He towered over Pierce. You swore an oath and you sold it for a strip mall. I'll give you whatever you want, Pierce pleaded. Just don't kill me. Dutch leaned down. We aren't going to kill you, Jim. Death is too easy. We're going to make you famous. Meanwhile, at the Rusty Nail, the atmosphere was rowdy. Sergeant Whitaker was holding court at the bar, surrounded by a few sycophants and nervous locals. He was drunk, loud, and feeling invincible. So I told him, Whitaker bellowed, slamming his beer on the counter. You want to see police brutality? I'll show you police brutality. The bar erupted in laughter, though some of it sounded forced. The front door opened. The laughter died instantly. Marcus Ellison walked in. He was alone. He wore jeans and a plain black t-shirt. He didn't look like a soldier. He looked like a storm front moving in. He walked straight to the bar. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. Nobody wanted to be near him. He stopped right next to Whitaker. Whitaker turned, his eyes glassy. Well, look who it is. Come to apologize for your mama? Marcus signaled the bartender. Club soda, lime. He turned to Whitaker. I'm not here for my mother, Sergeant. I'm here for you. Whitaker laughed, but it was a nervous sound. He put his hand on his holster. You threatening an officer again? In front of witnesses? I'm not threatening you, Marcus said, his voice level. I'm educating you. You see, Sergeant, you made a mistake. You thought because you have a badge, you have power. But power isn't a badge. Power is leverage. Marcus pulled out his phone and placed it on the bar. On the screen was a live video feed. It showed a sheriff's cruiser, Whitaker's cruiser, parked outside the station. That's my car, Whitaker said, confused. Watch, Marcus said. On the screen, the trunk of the cruiser popped open. A figure in black, Viper, reached in and pulled out a heavy duffel bag. He unzipped it to reveal bricks of white powder. The bar went silent. That's not mine, Whitaker shouted, sweat breaking out on his forehead. It's in your car, Marcus said. And according to the report you filed on Mrs. Higgins recently, possession is 9/10 of the law, right? You planted that, Whitaker. Did we? Marcus asked. Or is that the evidence you were going to plant in my mother's car? The drugs you keep in your locker? Cicero found your stash, Whitaker. We know you've been confiscating narcotics from dealers and keeping them to plant on your victims. Whitaker pulled his gun. The bar patron screamed and dove for cover. Marcus didn't flinch. He didn't even blink. He just took a sip of his club soda. Put it down, Whitaker, Marcus said. You're shaking. I'll kill you, Whitaker yelled, the gun trembling in his hand. I'll say you attacked me. I'm the law. Look around you, Marcus said calmly. Whitaker looked. Every single person in the bar had their phone out. They were all recording. You're not the law anymore, Whitaker, Marcus said. You're just a criminal with a gun. And if you pull that trigger, you verify everything I just said. Whitaker's eyes darted around the room. He saw judgment. He saw fear. But mostly, he saw that his reign of terror was evaporating. The fear he had used to control Oakhaven was gone, transferred entirely to him. This isn't over, Whitaker hissed, holstering his weapon. He turned to run out the back door. Marcus didn't chase him. He just watched him go. It is over, Marcus whispered. He just doesn't know it yet. Whitaker burst out the back door of the bar into the alleyway, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He needed to get to his stash house, get his emergency cash, and get out of the state. He fumbled for his car keys, his hands shaking so badly he dropped them in a puddle. "Damn it!" he screamed, dropping to his knees to find them. A spotlight hit him from above, blindingly bright. The whoop-whoop-whoop of a helicopter rotor filled the air. "Sergeant Whitaker, this is the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. Stay where you are." Whitaker shielded his eyes. GBI cars screeched into the alley from both ends, but they weren't sheriff's deputies. They were sleek blue state trooper chargers. Officers in tactical gear poured out, weapons drawn. Leading them was Bennett, Marcus's lawyer, walking briskly alongside a stern-looking woman in a GBI windbreaker. "Hands in the air!" the troopers shouted. Whitaker froze. He looked at the roof of the building opposite the alley. Standing there, silhouetted against the moonlight, were 4 figures: Marcus, Dutch, Viper, and Cicero. They weren't participating in the arrest. They were observing, like gods on Olympus, watching a tragedy they had written. Whitaker slowly raised his hands. "It's a setup. They planted it." The GBI agent walked up to him. "We received a verified digital packet regarding corruption in Oak Haven County, Sergeant, including audio recordings of you conspiring to plant evidence, video of you assaulting Etta Mae Ellison, and bank records linking you to the Oak Ridge development firm." That's illegal wiretapping," Whitaker shouted as they cuffed him. "Actually," Bennett said, stepping forward with a shark-like grin. "Under the Patriot Act, military intelligence gathered during an active threat assessment involving the family of a deployed Special Forces officer is admissible in federal court, especially when that intelligence uncovers a domestic terror ring operating under color of law." Whitaker's knees buckled. Domestic terror. That wasn't a slap on the wrist. That was life in federal prison. As they dragged Whitaker to the car, he looked up at the roof one last time. Marcus was gone. The next morning, the sun rose over a different Oak Haven. Sheriff Pierce had been arrested at his home early. He had surrendered without incident, weeping as he was led away in handcuffs. He had already cut a deal, giving up the mayor, the developers, and everyone involved in the scheme to save himself from a RICO charge. Marcus stood outside the hospital room. Etta was sitting up in bed, her arm in a sling, watching the news on the small TV mounted in the corner. Shocking revelations in Oak Haven today as the sheriff, 3 deputies, and the mayor are indicted on federal corruption charges. Etta turned off the TV as Marcus walked in. "You did this," she said softly. It wasn't a question. "We just made some calls, Mama," Marcus said, sitting beside her. "You brought a war to my town," she scolded him gently, though her eyes were shining with pride. "I finished a war," Marcus corrected. "They started it when they touched you." Bennett walked in carrying a thick folder. "Good morning, Mrs. Ellison. Major." "What's the damage?" Marcus asked. "Well," Bennett said, opening the folder, "the civil rights lawsuit is already drafted. The county is terrified. They are offering a settlement to avoid court. They want to pay for all medical bills, pain and suffering, and they are dropping all charges against Mrs. Higgins, Mr. Henderson, and everyone else targeted by Whitaker in the last several years." "And the land?" Etta asked. "The development deal is dead," Bennett smiled. "Oak Ridge Development is being seized by the Asset Forfeiture Division. The irony is delicious, and the town council has voted to rename the park across from the station." "Rename it what?" Marcus asked. "The Etta Mae Ellison Community Garden," Bennett said. Etta covered her mouth, tears welling up in her eyes. "Oh, Lord." "There is one more thing," Bennett said, looking at Marcus. "The Army. Your commanding officer called." Marcus stiffened. He knew he had bent a lot of rules, maybe too many. He had used military assets, intimidation, and his team for a personal vendetta. He was ready for the court-martial. "What did the colonel say?" Marcus asked. He said, Bennett read from a note, "Tell Major Ellison that his leave is extended for another week. And tell him good hunting." Marcus let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Later that afternoon, Marcus pushed Etta's wheelchair out of the hospital. The air was fresh, the humidity broken by a cool breeze. In the parking lot, the black SUVs were waiting. Dutch, Viper, and Cicero were leaning against them, looking like tourists now, wearing baseball caps and sunglasses. "You heading back?" Marcus asked Dutch. "Yeah," Dutch said. "We got a flight out of Atlanta in a short time. You staying?" "For a few days," Marcus said. "Someone has to fix the tail light on the sedan." "It was never broken, boss." Cicero grinned. "I know," Marcus smiled. "But I'm going to put in brighter ones anyway, just in case." As the team drove away, Etta looked up at her son. The swelling on her face had gone down, but the bruises were still there, yellow and green. "You know," she said, "Whitaker was right about one thing." "What's that?" Marcus asked, helping her into the passenger seat of the rental car. "He said nobody was coming to save me," Etta said. "He was right. You didn't come to save me." She patted his hand, her grip strong despite her age. "You came to save them from me," she chuckled, "because if I had gotten out of that cell myself, I might have had to use the wooden spoon on that boy." Marcus laughed, a genuine deep laugh that felt good in his chest. "I think the wooden spoon might have been worse than what we did, Mama." "Drive me to church, Marcus," Etta said, adjusting her Sunday hat, which she had insisted he bring from the house. "I have a testimony to give." The weeks following the raid were not quiet. They were the loud, messy, and necessary sounds of a wound finally being cleaned out. Oak Haven, Georgia, was a town turned upside down, shaken by its ankles until all the loose change and dirty secrets fell out of its pockets. The federal investigation, led by a relentless assistant U.S. attorney, didn't stop at Sheriff Pierce and Sergeant Whitaker. It rooted out the rot in the county clerk's office, where deeds were being altered. It exposed the judges who signed blank warrants for Whitaker to fill in later. It was a purge, but the real story wasn't in the courtroom. It was in the pews of the First Baptist Church on Elm Street 2 Sundays later. Etta Mae Ellison stood at the pulpit. Her arm was still in a sling, the purple bruising on her cheek fading to a sickly yellow, but her posture was upright. The church was packed, not just with the usual congregation, but with people who hadn't stepped foot in a church in years. Young men with hoodies, terrified elderly couples, and even a few honest deputies who had been too afraid to speak up under Whitaker's reign. Marcus sat in the front row, wearing his dress blues for the first time in the town. He wasn't wearing them for attention. He was wearing them as a shield for his mother. "Scripture tells us," Etta began, her voice gaining strength with every word, "that the Lord is a fortress for the oppressed, but sometimes," she looked down at Marcus, her eyes softening, "sometimes he sends a hammer to build that fortress." The congregation murmured, "Amen." "I was angry," Etta admitted. "When that man pulled me out of my car, I was filled with hate. I wanted fire, and fire came." She paused, the silence in the room heavy. "But fire burns everything if you don't control it. My son brought the fire, but now it is up to us to plant the seeds in the ash." She looked at the back of the room, where the newly appointed interim sheriff, a woman named Deputy Carter, who had once been reprimanded by Whitaker for being too soft, stood nervously. "We don't need to fear the badge anymore," Etta said, pointing at Carter. "Because the badge works for us now, but we have to watch it. We have to be the eyes. We have to be the community that doesn't look away when a neighbor is stopped. We have to be the ones who record, who speak, who stand." Marcus watched the room. He saw something he hadn't seen in Oak Haven since he was a child. Hope. It wasn't the naive hope that things would just work out. It was the gritty, hard-won hope of people who realized they had power. The legal retribution was swift and merciless. Sergeant Whitaker, stripped of his pension and his pride, stood before a federal judge in Atlanta months later. The courtroom was filled with his victims. Mrs. Higgins was there, leaning on a cane. Mr. Henderson, frail but present, sat in a wheelchair. And in the center, Etta Mae Ellison. Whitaker's lawyer tried to argue that Whitaker was a victim of a stressful job, a man who made mistakes under pressure. The judge, a stern man named Justice Holloway, wasn't having it. "Mr. Whitaker," the judge said, peering over his glasses, "you didn't make mistakes. You made a business model out of misery. You targeted the most vulnerable members of your community, the elderly who built that town, because you thought they were weak. You thought they had no voice." The judge glanced at Marcus, who was standing in the back of the courtroom in plain clothes, his arms crossed. "You forgot," the judge continued, "that every voice echoes. You are sentenced to 25 years in a federal penitentiary without the possibility of parole for conspiracy to commit civil rights violations, kidnapping, and racketeering." Whitaker slumped. He didn't look at Etta. He couldn't. As the bailiffs led him away, the clinking of his chains was the only sound in the room. It was the sound of karma collecting its debt. The day Marcus was set to deploy back to the Middle East, the air in Oak Haven was crisp and autumnal. The leaves were turning the color of fire and gold. He stood in the driveway of Etta's house. The sedan was parked there, gleaming. Marcus had not only replaced the taillights, he had overhauled the engine, put on new tires, and installed a dashcam that uploaded directly to a cloud server Bennett managed. "You don't have to go back, you know," Etta said, adjusting the collar of his jacket. "You've done your time. You could retire. Be the sheriff." Marcus laughed. "Mama, I'm not a peacekeeper. I'm a peacemaker. There's a difference. Oak Haven needs peacekeepers now. It needs Deputy Carter. It needs you." "I'm just an old woman who talks too much," Etta scoffed. "You're the general of this town now," Marcus said seriously. "I saw how they looked at you in church. You're the moral compass. If you point, they'll go." He hugged her, holding on a little longer than usual. The scent of her lavender soap and the faint smell of baking bread grounded him more than any meditation ever could. "I left something for you," Marcus whispered. "In the glove box." "What is it? A gun?" Etta pulled back, alarmed. "I don't want a gun, Marcus." "No guns," Marcus smiled. "Just a phone, a direct line. Not to me, to the governor's office. Bennett set it up. If anyone tries to bully you or your neighbors again, you press one button and the state police will be here in a short time." Etta smiled, patting his cheek. "My own personal cavalry." "Something like that." Marcus climbed into his truck. His team, Viper and Cicero, were waiting at the airfield. They had a new mission, a new target. But for the first time in years, Marcus felt light. He wasn't leaving his mother behind in a war zone anymore. He was leaving her in a fortress she had helped build. As he drove away, he looked in the rearview mirror. Etta was standing on the porch, waving. She looked small against the backdrop of the big oak trees, but Marcus knew the truth. She was the giant. He was just the hammer she had wielded. Months later, the Etta Mae Ellison Community Garden opened on the lot that was supposed to be a strip mall. It was a beautiful Saturday. Children were running through the rows of corn and tomatoes. Mr. Henderson was teaching a group of teenagers how to prune rose bushes. Etta pulled her sedan up to the curb. She checked her speed. Well under the limit. She signaled. She parked perfectly. As she got out, a young officer approached her. It was a new recruit, a boy named Officer Daniels. He looked nervous. "Afternoon, Mrs. Ellison," he said respectfully, touching the brim of his hat. Etta paused, a shadow of the old fear flickering in her chest. "Afternoon, officer. Is there a problem? No, ma'am. Daniel smiled. Sheriff Carter just wanted me to tell you that she's saving a spot for you at the front row of the Harvest Festival tonight. And, she wanted to know if you brought your peach cobbler. Etta's face broke into a radiant smile. The tension vanished. The war was truly over. You tell Sheriff Carter, Etta said, popping the trunk to reveal 3 foil-covered dishes, that the cobbler is ready, but she better bring her own spoon. As the officer helped her carry the pies toward the garden, the sun set over Oak Haven, casting long, peaceful shadows over a town that had learned the hardest lesson of all. You can break the law, and you can break bones, but you can never break the bond between a mother and her son. Karma hadn't just hit back, it had rebuilt the house. And that is the story of how a corrupt system crumbled because it underestimated the strength of an elderly woman and the resolve of a son who would burn the world down to protect her. It's a reminder that true power isn't about badges, guns, or political connections. True power is family. It's the unshakable belief that justice, while sometimes slow, is always watching. Sergeant Whitaker thought he was the predator, but he forgot that in the wild, even the lion fears the mother protecting her young. If this story fired you up, if you believe that karma always collects its debts, do me a favor. Smash that like button until it turns blue. Subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story of justice served cold. And tell me in the comments, what would you do if you had one phone call to make? Stay safe, stay strong, and remember, the truth always wins. See you in the next video.